Professor Thuli Madonsela, on a number of platforms now, is suggesting that South Africa should consider some sort of amnesty. She put it, lowering the consequences for corrupt people who played a, quote, minimal but critical role in corruption in our country. She joins us now on 702. Professor, welcome. Thanks for giving us your time.
Good afternoon, John. Thank you for the privilege.
I want to ask you this. It seems to me that implicit in what you're suggesting is an assumption that people involved in corruption, if given amnesty, might change and might become better people and might not do it again. What do you base that assumption on, if indeed that's an assumption you're making?
That's the assumption that I'm making. Is the same assumption that prosecutions make in crime. Corruption is a crime. I also happened to have attended a corruption conference many years ago where the mayor, or a former mayor of Bogota, spoke about inducing those who are involved in corruption to become witnesses, and in return for a free pass or at least a lesser punishment. I do want to explain, though, that my engagement targeted those who would have played a minor role, and I know that a whole lot of people have now responded on my timeline angry and saying, I want to give my friends in the ANC a free pass, or I have a sense that some of my friends might be implicated. That's not the deal. My interest here is not even the politicians. My interests are the clerks in the system, the administrators. It's the public servants who were corrupted, and they're still in the system. Once you're corrupted, there's a tendency that you proceed. So you need to be given an opportunity to self-identify and be rehabilitated, because if they've not been rehabilitated and they're in the system, they might just still continue to steal as an insurance to make sure that when things go wrong, they have a nest egg somewhere.
So I think the word clerk might be not entirely helpful in us getting our heads around this. Are you saying that people, for example, at the level of a DG, a Director General, or a head of a housing department who deliberately misdirected a tender process for the sake of argument? So in other words, it's not somebody who just used a rubber stamp, but actually had some agency in the looting of public money. Would you give people at that level amnesty? I mean, would your distinction be legal or would it be moral?
No, my distinction would be legal.
Yes.
I indicated that the people I would be targeting would be the ones who played a minor role, and therefore I'm not looking at a kingpin who actually planned and made other people to engage in corruption. I'm talking about somebody who was in the conveyor belt and was required to pay this amount of money to someone. I'll give you an example. When I was investigating Praza investigation that was not concluded and it's now playing out in the commission, there was an allegation, and I was given papers showing that 100 million was paid out to someone, and it was wrong. And then the money was paid out to several people.
Right.
And obviously, the finance people, the little people in the system would have paid that money. They would have known that there was nothing in the contract that required them to pay this money and to pay this money to the specific person that it was paid to, because everything has to be done according to rules. So the people who bend the rules, for example, for certain amounts you have to have 3 quotations. For big amounts it must go to tender. For somebody to go into the system, there are rules. They should have been in business for a certain number of years. They should be functional. They should have a tax clearance. So anybody who allowed themselves to ignore those rules would have done so because some big boss. And I'm not suggesting they didn't have agency. I'm just saying their culpability was diminished. But we need to know, because they're the ones who know exactly who was paid and who instructed to be paid. Then we can follow the money. If it was said X said Y must be paid, we then follow up on X and check X's bank statements to find out what was in it for them. Why would they do this?
So, Professor, is this a legal driven strategy where, for example, what you're offering people in a sense is a plea bargain and not necessarily a blanket amnesty? You're saying to somebody, if you tell us exactly why you paid Mr. Perlman all this money despite the fact that he didn't have a valid tax clearance and 4 other reasons, if you are prepared to tell us exactly what happened, we are prepared to give you amnesty. Is that how you're seeing it, or is it some form of absolution?
Exactly. Why did it? More importantly, it would even be what we took, we call false billing. Somebody billed you for something that hadn't been done, and you know, according to the rules, you're supposed to do due diligence. This person was supposed to have built for you 100 houses. They've only built 1. You pay them. Why on earth would you pay them?
Yes.
The toll trains at Prasa. You're supposed to do due diligence in terms of what were the specs and what is the delivery. Is there a match? If there isn't. So I'm not targeting the big guys. I'm targeting the enablers. But the enablers who, yes, had agency, as you said, but they felt powerless because their status in the food chain is quite junior, and it's much easier to get rid of them and to replace them.
Can I just ask one last question, and it's very much a fact-based one for me. Would the fact, if any of those people took money out of a corrupt deal that was done, however small, would you say that then disqualifies them from the amnesty you're proposing, or is that a blind alley that I'm going down?
No, it's a good question. They would still get amnesty even if they took money.
Yes.
However, they would be required to pay back. Usually, when people are involved in this corrupt value chain, there is something they get themselves. Their own hands are greased. I would be surprised if anybody got involved in corruption purely out of fear and they never got any deal. It might not be straight money.
Yes.
It might be fees for your child, or it might be a holiday somewhere.
A birthday party or something,
yes, in kind gratification.
Thank you very much. Well, raising some really interesting questions. Professor Thuli Madonsela, former public protector, chair in social justice at Stellenbosch University. What do you think about this conversation? Give us a ring, 011-883-0702. You can always send us a SMS to 31702. WhatsApp voice note, 072-702-1702.
News.
Experts.
Analysis.
Where things stand.
What you need to know. Drive home with John Perlman
On 702.